Hi everyone, and welcome back, or welcome to Stitches Past 5. My name is Vera, and today I thought we would do another knitting podcast. Now I've got my tea here, so go grab yours if you'd like, and yeah, then I'm excited to talk about all the things that have been going on in my knitting life, and I have a little crochet extra today as well, so stay tuned for that. So the seasons are changing, and I've been really getting back into the winter or autumn knitting mode, or mood I should say, where I enjoy, thinking about thicker sweaters again and making cardigans or thinking about them and, just getting cozied up. And I feel like this time of year is interesting because like in my job where I work, like it's the busiest time of year, but also like just life slows down a little bit otherwise, which is nice just because it's colder and less goes on outside. I mean, we are still spending a lot of time outside and running when and where we can because we do a lot of running just for training for various races that we take part in. But outside of that, not much is happening. So I mean, I guess it is quite busy because work takes up a lot of time, and then running, and then there's often like only half an hour or so or an hour at the end of the day to actually get knitting. But nevertheless, I have been finishing some items. A lot of them have also been gift knits just because I do make an advent calendar for my brother every year. So I've been doing like a few like small things here or there kind of throughout time. So like I started pretty early this year, which was really nice. But today I do have two finished items to show you, and then one work in progress, and then one soon to be cast on project that I'll also share a little bit about. So let's get started. Okay, so I have my little knitting diary book here where, I mean, it's less of a diary, more of a note-taking book, but I do try to kind of like share or write down all the things that I make, mainly just so that I remember like this needle size that I've used and what size of a pattern I made and what gauge I was able to hit with a certain yarn. I find it very helpful. And yeah, so I haven't printed out all the pictures to go with it, but I have definitely like been keeping my notes. So my first finished object that I want to share today is this one right here, and that is my honey cardigan. Let me show you. Ta-da! I've been talking about this a lot, and I finally finished it, so I'm super happy. Here it is. Let me hold it up. There we go. I'll also just input some footage of me wearing it. I'll give a little overview of the specs, and then I'll share a bit more about my experience in knitting this. So the pattern I used was the honey cardigan by Kutovakika. I talk about her all the time. I own her book. I love her patterns, and this is one of the first patterns, or one of the first cardigan patterns in her book. I knit this with the yarn Drops Air, which is a yarn that I have sometimes a little bit of a love-hate relationship with. I've used it a lot just because it is very available here and pretty affordable. So yeah, so this is Drops Air in like a burgundy maroon color. I will say that on camera it looks more red, whereas in person it actually looks a lot more like purpley red, like more maroon. Like the sweater I'm wearing is like almost the same shade, I would say, but for some reason the camera picks it up differently. But I started this project in the middle of September, and it took me almost exactly 1 month to finish, and I actually thought it was going to be a lot faster, but more about that later. The needle size I used was a 4.5mm needle for the half fisherman's rib stitch at the back and for the sleeves, and then for the detailed ribbing here, which is not focusing, there we go, I used a 3.5mm needle. And with the half fisherman stitch, I was able to hit a gauge of 17 stitches after blocking, and that's important with half fisherman stitch, on 10 centimeters. It grows immensely, so like I think before I had a lot more. I think I had like 19 stitches, and then it grew to like 17 stitches per 10 centimeters. So make sure you block your half fisherman's rib stitch before measuring your gauge. The size I made was a size S, And for this size, I'll kind of like give you an impression of the length of it. I used exactly 298 grams of yarn. So that's about, or that's exactly, I should say, 6 skeins of the 50-gram yarn balls as they come in drops air. So my experience with this cardigan was interesting. I love the stitching, like the stitch definition I think comes out perfect with this yarn because it is a pretty fuzzy yarn. So I was a little bit worried that the half fisherman's rib stitch would get a little bit lost, but I don't really think at all that's the case. Like it's pretty defined still. Of course this is after steam blocking, and I also wet blocked some parts because I wanted to see a difference if it makes a difference. It did make a difference for this yarn. So I really enjoyed making it. Like the half fisherman's stitch basically is like a combination of knitting like through the bottom loop and then purling. And I'm usually not the biggest rib lover because I don't know, I don't love knit purl. I just don't like that combination. But for some reason, I really enjoyed this half fisherman's rib stitch, although it was like a pretty similar motion of like knit purl kind of. It grew pretty quickly, so I thought it was gonna be a pretty quick pattern. I just ended up getting really busy and not really being able to work on it for too much, but I did get it done. The construction is a little bit interesting. So it is knit in like panels. So you make the back panel, then you make the front left panel, the front right panel, then you make the sleeves as a rectangle, and then the other sleeve as another rectangle, and then you kind of block it all, and only then do you sew it together. The pattern recommends that you block it before sewing together just because then it like kind of falls into its final shape, and I think that makes sense. The only thing I have with this pattern is, first of all, okay, I love the body. Like the body part is great. I think it's a lovely length. I think the ribbing at the bottom, like it's a bit hard to see, but it's like left, right ribbing up until around about here, and then it goes into half fisherman's rib stitch. I think that's all beautiful. I love the collar. It's like a folded collar that you add right at the end. My only critique of this pattern is the sleeves. For the sleeves, you knit like a rectangle and you only increase twice, which is very few increases for a sleeve. And both those times you only increase one stitch at the front and one stitch at the back. So the sleeve essentially, I mean, you can see it here as well. It's obviously like folded into a sleeve now, but it is a very straight rectangle. Like you can almost not really see any increases. So it kind of like, it's very wide, like around here. And then like it just gets tighter and tighter up here. So I don't know, I feel like it would have been so easy to just like add another 2 or 3 increases up the sleeve. So I recommend that if you're making this pattern, like consider that. If you want a cardigan that's really like up on your underarm, go for this. But if you want something that's like a little bit lower, like a little bit more of a relaxed underarm, then add a few more increases because it is worked like cuff to top. So it should be pretty easy to do. Like you just do it at the end. That's one critique I had. I did try to like, I think on one side, I think this side, I tried to like sew it on a little bit stretched out already, and that did help a little bit. But I just think that's something that should be in the increases of the sleeve and not by me like stretching it to try to sew it on. Otherwise, this was a really easy pattern to follow. If you don't like sewing stuff together, this might not be the best pattern for you because it is quite a lot of sewing and merging things together in various stitches. You can see that I think here on this side, like my sewing is also just not the neatest because I had to undo it just because of the sleeve construction. I don't really mind, and you don't really see it when it's worn. It's like super defined here because of the lighting, but I find that when I wear it and move around in it, it's not really noticeable. But so much for the pattern. Yeah, I think blocking it was also not the easiest because I don't have that much blocking space. Like I only have one blocking mat, so I kind of had to like do it in separate shifts of blocking because it does just take a few days to fully dry where we are, obviously because it's dried flat. But overall, I have to say I'm super happy with this end result. And then another thing was that I was playing the worst game of yarn chicken. As I said, I used 298 grams and that's 6 skeins of yarn, but I only had 5 skeins of yarn because I had already made a beanie in that same yarn. Ended up undoing the beanie, which is a pain with drops air. Like, it's such an awful yarn to undo because it's pretty fuzzy. So my grandma was helping me and we were helping together so I could like finish this cardigan. You don't see where it's like reused yarn, the color is reused. Not focusing, but you don't see it, so it's totally fine. But yeah, in the pattern, I kind of knew this was gonna happen, but I already knew that I was probably gonna undo the beanie anyway, so it didn't really matter. But I finished it nevertheless. I have worn it, and the only thing that's missing at the moment are the buttons. So I did make like the button band with the button hold. I can't even find them right now, but there are button holes in here. And in my last podcast, I actually asked you for advice of which buttons to use, but I wanted to try it without the buttons because now I'm like, oh, I don't know if I love either button enough to like put it on. I've worn it like this once and it was fine. What I'll probably do is I will sew on the buttons and see if I use them, and if not, I'll just take them off again. After wearing this, I noticed how warm the drops air yarn is. Oh my goodness, like I was so warm that entire day. Now granted, our weather right now is all over the place. We have this warm mountain air that just really like, it'll be like 5 degrees in the morning and then 22 in the afternoon, and that's just normal. So I'll definitely be wearing this cardigan more as like actual winter comes around. But for this time around, it was just way too hot and I only wore the cardigan like a few hours in the morning, and then I took it off that day at work when I wore it. But so much for my honey cardigan. I love the color. I love how it turned out. I'm not really bothered by the sleeves. I mean, I could undo this one and like kind of stretch it out a little bit again, but I think I'm just gonna leave it until I get bothered by it, because I mean, why fix something that's not really bothering me anyways, right? But just for you to know, like, also maybe if you have a bit like bigger upper arms, like bigger biceps, triceps, whatever, like then that's something that you really might want to consider when making this pattern, to just do a few more increases at the end of the sleeves. But so much for my honey cardigan. I mentioned that I am making I made an advent calendar for my brother. He does not live in the same continent, so we kind of don't see each other too often, so it's all done and shipped with him. But one other finished item that I wanted to share that I made for him, and this is a kind of a fun one, but it is the Tom Daley's, it's a dog hood, and the pattern is by Tom Daley of his knitting book. I will put in a video of what the hood ended up looking like. I also put it on like to my grandma's dog, so that's him wearing it here. He does love it, but my brother's dog is different. He'll wear accessories, but this dog hates accessories, so that was not gonna be for him anyways. But I followed the pattern of Tom Daley's dog hood, which is obviously like a fun pattern he put into his book. I have his book, and this is the first pattern I made out of it. And yeah, let me give you the specs first before we get into the pattern. So for the dog hood pattern, like I said, Tom Daley's dog hood is the pattern. The yarn I used was Drops Cotton Light. This is a cotton polyester blend, and it's just like a very affordable, like standard cotton polyester yarn, like truly nothing special about it. Like I have a lot of it just because like for projects like this is nice. Like I just like having yarn at hand. And it's washable. It's like pretty, like there's literally, it's your standard yarn. I did a review of it here as well, so if you're interested, go check that out. I'll try to link it. But yeah, so Drops Cotton Light, and I used like a dark red, a light red, and a gray because I didn't have green and I wanted to be Christmassy because it is like for Christmas kind of. But yeah, so I made it in these. I still think it looks Christmassy. I think it's fine. I mean, it's for a dog. And yeah, I completed this thing in probably around about a week. I did have like just some like my error reading the pattern where I skipped an entire thing of the pattern because I was doing it late at night and I was just not paying attention. So I would say if you made it like start to finish, you can definitely finish this in a week. It's a pretty small project, and I used around, I want to say 50 grams. I didn't weigh it, but just kind of judging from like how much yarn I used from the skeins that I still have left from the project. I used a 3mm knitting needle size with that Drops Cotton Light yarn. So that's a smaller needle for the yarn that it is, but turned out totally fine. I don't know what to say about this pattern because obviously it's for a dog, so like, and it says like for medium to a large size dog. I mean, I'm making this for a pug because a pug, like, I feel like head-wise a pug fits into the small to medium category dog anyways because it's pretty like big head. But yeah, so I can say nothing about sizing, and like I didn't take gauge too seriously either because I mean, I don't know this dog's measurements. I hope it fits him, if not the end of the world either. But I will say that the pattern, I just thought it could use a lot more detail. Like, I haven't really like looked into the other patterns of the book, like into detail where I was like, I would be making it, but I have looked into them and they're all pretty similar. And that's just that, first of all, that I don't want to criticize the book too much because like I've only made one pattern, so take this with a grain of salt. But it is just a very basic layout, a very basic kind of like the text is like pressed together. I don't know if this is because I have the ebook version and maybe something went up there, I don't know, but it's essentially you're reading paragraphs. You're reading paragraphs of stitching that you need to do, and that's why I also ended up like accidentally skipping a whole part because I just skipped 3 lines, which is not the good thing to do in a knitting pattern anyways. But yeah, it was a pretty straightforward pattern to follow, like nothing too difficult or anything. But I still would have wished there was like a little bit more instruction, because then it would be like, okay, now pick up and just continue border. I'm like, okay, but in what color, in what, like how many stitches do I pick up? Like I was just like missing a little bit of extra information in the pattern. Worked out fine. Like, I mean, I would say I have enough knitting experience to be able to go off a pattern like that, but I would also say that if you're like a brand new beginner knitter, maybe stay clear of this pattern for now, because it was just a lot of like, I understand that when it says continue as per pattern, like, or continue in the right order, I'm like, okay, that must mean stitches, that must mean color, that must mean like circular, like, because it kind of switches between panel and circular knitting. So a lot of that I found was like missing a little bit, but all in all, I still made the pattern. Mine turned out exactly like his. I did like input like a little tiny string to like tie the head in case it's like an open hood. It's so hard for me to like gauge the size of a pug's head without having a pug. So I was just kind of guessing. But yeah, that's my second finished item, Tom Daley's dog hood for my brother's dog. I hope he's not watching this. But anyways, now I have another bonus item. This is my surprise crochet edition that I just really want to share with you because it's so cute. I mean, this is a knitting podcast, so I do try to share my knitting life on here, but I made a little penguin and he is so cute. Oh my goodness. So this is actually like my own plushie pattern that I wrote like a while ago, and I just really wanted to make him out of thin cotton yarn, and he's so cute, and he's like guarding our TV, and it's the cutest thing ever. So here's another finished item. The pattern I used is my own, so shameless plug I guess, which I also made a YouTube tutorial for now, but I also have it as an Etsy PDF pattern. This is the baby penguin right here, because I also have pop-up penguins, but this is the baby one. As you can see, it's teeny tiny. The yarn I used was the Hobbi 8/4 Cotton Friends yarn, Mercerized, and I mean, needle size, I think it was like a 2.5mm needle or hook size crochet hook that I used for him. But he's so cute. Oh, I love him. He's adorable. First I wanted to gift him, but I'm like, no, I have to keep him. Like, I'm making another one, but this one has to stay. But anyways, just a little interlude of a little baby penguin right over here. Also, in case you're wondering where my beautiful, beautiful mug is from, I love this mug so much. It's from Anthropology, which does not exist here where I am in Europe or anywhere in my radius, in all honesty. So, I mean, I used to live in Canada, so I had one, the predecessor of this sadly broke when I was visiting. I knew I had to get a replacement, so it looks a little bit different to my first one, but this is like, has to be one of my favorite, if not my favorite mug. Oh, it's just so fun. But anyways, let's get to the next chapter, which are my works, or my one work in progress. Now, I'm a knitter who I like one thing at a time, and if there's like too many things on my needles, I'm usually not the biggest fan. Although now I am kind of toying with the idea of just starting a few more things so that I have options that like I could reach out to when I'm, you know, deciding what to knit. Like I don't know, I feel like I don't always want to make the same thing for like a month or two straight. So that being said, I did cast on a new project on Sunday evening, and right now it literally looks like this, so it doesn't look like much at the moment. But what this is going to be the Men's Zipper Light by PetiteKnit. Yeah, so I'm making this for not myself, but for my partner. I'm making the men's version. I think she also has a woman's version. And it is the light version because I'm using this yarn. So that's the Bluefaced Leicester Fleece, 100% British wool. This is a DK weight yarn. And according to the yarn at the back, it has a gauge of 22 stitches by 28 rows. I knew I wanted to make him another sweater, and I knew that I probably wanted to make a quarter zip. And I mean, I've talked about this before, but we were on holiday in Scotland, and I really loved the idea of like being in a different place and maybe not buying too many souvenirs, but actually buying yarn from that place, because then I can make like a Scotland sweater for him now. He already has a Riga sweater from our recent trip to Riga. So now he's gonna get a Scotland sweater, which I think is just a really fun way of like remembering a place. But yeah, so I knew that I wanted a zipper sweater, half zip, quarter zip, whatever. I didn't know what pattern I was gonna use or what yarn I was gonna use. And when we found this yarn, it's like this beautiful like gray, bluish gray, I'd say, color. The color is called Fossil 1034, so 1034. And yeah, so we found this and we knew that that was going to be the yarn that he would want. He actually also like helped choose it, which is also always a plus. And then I knew that PetiteKnit had 2 zipper sweaters, and I just haven't made a pattern from PetiteKnit in a while. So it's kind of like been itching to make one again, just because I really enjoy the patterns and they're good and they're easy, and like I just like that. So I bought the Men's Zipper Light pattern because the other pattern, like the gauge was just way too big, and like this yarn was way too thin for that. And then this weekend I made 2 gauge swatches. So I made this one here and this one here, and now it's probably gonna be really hard to tell any sort of difference between these two. But one is 4.5mm needles and one is 4mm needles. The suggested needle size on the yarn is 4mm, and with that I got a gauge of 22 stitches for 10 centimeters, but the pattern calls for 20 stitches, so I had 2 options: either do a lot of gauge maths, which I'm fine with, or try a half needle size up, and that got me to 20 stitches, which is exactly what the pattern calls. But then I still like wasn't really sure. I mean, I don't know if you can see it. The top stitch definition is just like a lot tighter than the bottom one. It's really hard to see. But it's not like, if you only see this one, you would never say like, oh, I want tighter stitches, and vice versa. Like, it's really a thing that you only have the comparison when you have it next to each other. So we kind of decided together, and we figured out that it really doesn't matter. And if anything, he prefers like a little bit of a lighter sweater, or like a more movable sweater than a really stiff sweater. So we are gonna go, or I'm gonna go for the 4.5mm needles. Works out perfectly because then I meet gauge exactly 20 stitches. Whereas this one would have also worked, but yeah, it's just like a little bit tougher because of the tighter stitch definition. So I started, and I've made this right now, which looks probably pretty confusing, but it is a Judy's Magic cast on, and this is all we have right now because it's 1x1 ribbing. So I don't know if you can see it here, like looks like just stockinette, but it is 1x1 ribbing, and it's like double knit, so I'm kind of working my way around. It'll probably take a while because I need to do this for 20 centimeters. I am making size M for my partner because that's what the measurements require. Yeah, so this is where we're at. I'm really happy with this wool and the stitch definition of it. Very curious. I've never really worked with like British fleece wool before. I think fleece, like I did my research and it's not gonna like turn into a fleece when you wash it. It's just the definition that's used for this particular type of wool. And yeah, this is where we're at. So we're not really far at all because I only cast off my cardigan this weekend, and then I was excited to kind of get gauge swatching and start this one off. Yeah, and then one more thing to mention is that this is on 3.5mm needles because like it's a needle size down from the normal stockinette stitch, but that's usually the case for ribbing anyways. So this is where we're at. I'll probably be working on this quite a bit more because I'm just excited to see how this one turns out, and if it turns out well, I actually have enough yarn to probably make myself a quarter zip as well, and I love that. I already bought the zip. I'll show you. This one here, I wanted it to just be pretty neutral to kind of like match this, but still like I wanted the metal look and I didn't want a plastic zipper. The zipper was $7.90 or €8, something like that. Just in my local drugstore, they have a pretty good like crafting section, so it was there. It was like surprisingly hard. I was looking at like craft stores to find a zipper, but nowhere had a 35cm zipper. So I was about to order one online. I was like, I'll just check my like drugstore. Maybe they have it, and go figure. Obviously they have it, but I didn't figure to check before then. But I guess that's just how things work out sometimes. Super happy that I got this zipper. So now there is just a lot of knitting to do. I do only have, and this might be an issue, but I only have 500 grams of this because that's all the lady in Scotland in Edinburgh had. So I'm hoping it'll be enough. If not, then supposedly this can be ordered to the UK where we are going anyways, so that might be the option it takes. I want to finish this like by December so that if I need more yarn, I can order it and like pick it up then. But that's just a quick side note. 500 grams, I don't know. I made him another sweater, it was like 480 grams with a similar like yardage and weight, so I'm hoping, but part of me thinks I might need to order another skein. To be determined, we will see. Okay, my next project is going to be with the yarn that I bought for myself in Scotland, which has just been lying around now, which is this, what is this? Mechita Wales Road, and this beautiful like turquoise, dark teal, light blue, like mix, like from a hand-dyed yarn. And with this, I think I've now decided that I'm gonna make a mini scarf. Probably gonna do the one I found a free pattern online. I'll link it below. I don't know what it's called right now, but it's just a nice little scarf. Kind of, I don't know. It's that time of year where the mornings are cold, so I just want something around my neck. So hopefully this will be a pretty quick project. I'll probably cast it on like sometime this week and start working on that as well. I haven't started yet, but it's literally like about to go on the needle, so let's see. This yarn, by the way, has a gauge of 26 by 30 stitches, so it is like a pretty small gauge. I guess it's sport weight. It is 100% superwash merino, and I'm just excited to use it. I have 2 skeins, but that should be more than enough for a little mini scarf. But yeah, so that's kind of like what I've been working on, what I've been finishing, and like what I'm working on at the moment. I do want to share like one more acquisition that I don't think I shared last time. Just some basic, I have a few more colors, but essentially I just ordered this online, and it is your regular 4-ply 75% wool, 25% polyamide sock wool. This is by Opal. Everything is in German here because we're in Austria, but it's just your regular sock yarn. So I'm hoping to create something nice out of that. I have the 52 weeks of socks book that I just want to get more into, and I feel like if I have the yarn at home, I might just pick it up and like make a pair of socks out of it. Because my local yarn store, I mean, I live in a relatively like medium-sized small town, so like we have yarn stores, but a lot of them are open only like 2 or 3 hours a day, or like super small, and I still go and like I check in, but I don't always find what I'm looking for. So I do end up just ordering a lot of stuff online, and that's how it was with this as well. I did buy sock yarn from there as well, which I'm working on socks right now that I'll probably show you next time. That's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. I would love for you to stick around and subscribe, give a thumbs up if you've liked this video, and I'd love to hear from you below what works you're currently on, like what your autumn or fall or winter, I guess already, knitting looks like at the moment. So leave a comment down below, and yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!